The mansion was large and beautiful, with tall windows that let in the sunlight and polished floors that shone almost like mirrors. Outside, the gardens stretched wide with colorful flowers and neatly trimmed bushes. Inside, everything was grand, from the chandeliers that hung from the ceilings to the expensive carpets that covered the floors. It was the kind of place people admired from the outside, but inside not everything was as perfect as it seemed. In this mansion lived a wealthy family who owned everything they could wish for. They had servants to do all the work, from cleaning the rooms to cooking the meals. Among the servants was a young maid, quiet and diligent, always careful to do her work properly and avoid trouble. Her life was simple, and she rarely complained, even though the family she worked for could be difficult at times. The lady of the house was known for her sharp words and strict attitude. She enjoyed keeping control over the mansion and, more than anything, she liked to show off her power over others. The servants often felt her eyes on them, judging every small mistake. She had a particular way of looking at people she thought were beneath her, and no one in the house was safe from her criticism, not even the young maid. The lady seemed to take pleasure in pointing out flaws, sometimes making fun of the smallest errors in front of everyone. The maid had a son, a quiet and sensitive boy who spent most of his time reading or practicing piano. He was not very tall for his age and often kept to himself, staying out of the way so he wouldn't draw attention. His mother worked hard to make sure he had enough food, clean clothes, and a little comfort in the busy household. Though life was not easy, the boy loved music and spent hours at the piano whenever he could. The music made him feel free, as if the world outside the mansion and its strict rules did not exist. When his fingers touched the keys, he could forget everything and be completely himself. The lady of the house, however, never noticed this. She only saw a timid boy, someone she could easily belittle. She had often commented on how small and quiet he was, saying he lacked confidence and charm. Her words hurt, and the boy sometimes felt ashamed of being so different from the other children in the wealthy circles she belonged to. But he kept his love for music a secret, not wanting anyone to know how much he could play or how deeply he felt when he did. One afternoon, as the boy walked past the drawing room, he overheard the lady speaking to her friends. She was laughing and speaking loudly, making sure her words reached him even though she thought he would remain invisible. "The maid's boy is so awkward," she said. "I wonder if he will ever be able to do anything impressive. I should have him perform at our next gathering and watch him embarrass himself. It would be so entertaining." She laughed at her own idea, imagining the boy failing and everyone else laughing. The boy's heart sank, but he did not show his fear. He walked quietly past the room, keeping his head down, trying not to attract more attention. He felt a mix of worry and determination. Worry because he knew she would try to make him the center of ridicule, and determination because, secretly, he wanted to prove her wrong. He had practiced for years in the privacy of his small corner of the house, and though he was nervous, he knew he could play beautifully. The thought of music comforted him even as he feared the coming embarrassment. The days passed, and the mansion prepared for a gathering. Guests were invited, some of them friends of the lady, others distant relatives who were always curious about the household staff. The boy watched from the shadows as the staff worked tirelessly to clean, cook, and arrange everything perfectly. He noticed the lady checking every detail, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She was proud of the mansion and proud of the way she could command everyone inside it, and she took her time planning how she would make the boy the subject of amusement during the evening. On the day of the gathering, the mansion buzzed with activity. Silver trays clinked as food was arranged, flowers were positioned in perfect symmetry, and the house smelled of polished wood and freshly baked pastries. The boy's mother was busy in the kitchen, keeping everything running smoothly while sneaking glances at her son, who was nervously pacing near the piano. She wanted to warn him, to tell him to stay calm, but she also knew that this was his moment. She had seen him practice countless hours, and she trusted that he could handle himself. She had always believed in his talent, even when the rest of the world did not. As the first guests arrived, the lady welcomed them with smiles and a perfectly rehearsed charm. She had a glass of wine in her hand, and her voice was smooth as she directed the servants with precise orders. The boy stayed near the piano, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes, even though most had not yet noticed him. He tried to calm his breathing, reminding himself that he had prepared for this. He remembered every note, every melody, and the countless hours he had spent making sure his fingers would move correctly, no matter what happened. Finally, the lady spotted him. She smiled in that sharp way that made the boy's stomach tighten. She walked toward him with a kind of slow, deliberate grace, as if savoring the moment she would make him look foolish. Her voice was sweet, but her words were meant to sting. "Why don't you play something for our guests tonight? I am sure they would love to hear you," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. The guests murmured politely, curious to see the boy who had been mentioned so often by the lady. The boy hesitated for a moment, but then he stepped forward. He placed his fingers on the keys and took a deep breath. He knew he could do it. He knew that the music he had practiced in private would speak louder than any cruel words. The lady expected awkwardness, stumbling, and embarrassment. She had planned for everyone to laugh. But she did not know the secret world the boy carried in his heart. The world where his music could shine and make even the largest mansion feel small and still. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but they carried a beauty that made the room pause. Guests shifted in their seats, turning their attention to the piano, surprised by the sound. The boy's confidence grew with each chord, his fingers moving more freely, his heart opening with the music. The mansion, once a place of strict rules and harsh judgments, began to feel different. For the first time, the boy was not just the timid son of a maid. He was a musician, a storyteller, a presence impossible to ignore. In that moment, the boy realized that he had a power the lady could never take away. The power to touch hearts and capture attention not through wealth or status, but through skill, emotion, and dedication. The setup that was meant to humiliate him had become the stage where he could show his true self. And as the guests listened, completely absorbed, the boy felt a quiet joy, knowing that this was only the beginning of a story that would change not only how others saw him, but also how he saw himself. The day of the gathering arrived with the mansion humming in activity. Every corner of the grand house was alive with motion. The servants hurried to arrange flowers, polish silverware, and prepare food. The boy's mother moved quietly among them, keeping a careful eye on her son. She could see the tension in his small shoulders and the nervous tapping of his fingers against the piano bench. She wanted to reassure him, but she also knew that he needed to find his own strength in this moment. She had seen him practice in secret for years, and she trusted him completely. The lady of the house moved through the halls, smiling at her guests, her sharp eyes glinting with the satisfaction of a plan well set. She had announced to everyone that the boy would perform, expecting a scene that would entertain and amuse. She imagined the guests whispering, trying not to laugh out loud at his awkwardness. She did not realize that the boy had been preparing not just to play, but to show his heart and skill to anyone willing to listen. The boy stood near the piano, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. He could hear the lady's laughter in his mind, imagining the sneers she had already planned. His stomach churned with anxiety, but deep down, he held on to his secret world of music. It was a place where he had practiced tirelessly, where each note had been perfected through dedication and passion. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that he could do this. Music had always been his friend, and now it could be his shield. Guests began arriving in greater numbers. The chatter of polite conversation filled the mansion, the clinking of glasses and soft laughter creating a background hum. The boy noticed a few guests glance curiously at him, whispering quietly. Some seemed genuinely interested, while others shared the lady's expectation of ridicule. The boy swallowed hard and moved toward the piano, his small fingers brushing against the keys. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, recalling the countless hours spent practicing alone in his room, away from judgment and expectation. In those hours, he had poured his heart into each melody, and now he had to summon that courage in front of an audience. The lady approached him with a slow, deliberate elegance, as if savoring every second. She spoke to the guests, her voice dripping with amusement. I thought it would be delightful to have the maid's son play a piece for us. Perhaps we will all be entertained, she said with a sharp smile. The guests looked on, some with polite interest, others barely hiding their anticipation for a scene of embarrassment. The boy nodded politely, his face calm, though his heart raced. He took a moment to position himself properly at the piano. He straightened his back, placed his hands over the keys, and let out a quiet sigh. The first few notes trembled slightly, betraying his nervousness. But as soon as they resonated through the room, something changed. The sound was soft but clear, delicate yet confident. It was as if the music itself had stepped forward, demanding attention and respect. At first, the lady's smile faltered. She had expected awkwardness and failure, not a sound so precise and moving. Guests shifted in their seats, turning toward the piano, drawn by the beauty of the music. The boy's fingers moved carefully at first, then with growing confidence, as he allowed the melody to flow freely. Each chord seemed to tell a story, carrying emotion that went beyond simple notes on a page. The boy's heart synchronized with the rhythm, and the music filled the room, touching each listener in ways they did not anticipate. The boy felt a sense of freedom he had never experienced in the mansion before. He could see the surprise on the faces of some guests, the polite admiration of others, and the flicker of shock in the lady's eyes. Her plan to humiliate him was failing before her very eyes. The music was not just beautiful. It was undeniable, and it commanded the room's attention. The boy's confidence grew with each passing measure, his movements becoming more fluid, more expressive. He was no longer just a timid boy being forced to perform. He had become a storyteller, a creator of emotion through sound. Guests whispered among themselves, unable to hide their fascination. Some leaned forward, captivated by the depth of feeling in the music. Others exchanged glances, realizing that the boy was far more talented than anyone had imagined. Even the servants paused in their duties, drawn to the unexpected brilliance emanating from the piano. The boy continued, losing himself in the music, his fear replaced by focus and passion. The mansion, once filled with whispers and expectations of ridicule, was now quiet, each person present hanging on every note. The lady, however, was not silent. Her sharp eyes widened in disbelief as she watched the boy perform. She had never expected such skill, never imagined that he could play with such emotion and control. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend how this small, quiet boy could command attention so completely. She had intended for him to be a source of amusement, but now he had become the center of admiration. She could feel her own authority challenged, her carefully constructed image of superiority shaken by the music he produced. The boy continued to play, his confidence surging with the audience's unspoken approval. Each note seemed to float through the room, touching hearts and stirring emotions. He felt a connection to the listeners he had never felt before, a silent communication through the universal language of music. The lady's laughter, once imagined as cruel, was replaced by astonishment, and for the first time, she had no words ready to criticize. She watched as the boy's fingers danced across the keys, producing a melody so powerful that it left her momentarily speechless. As the performance went on, the boy noticed small signs of respect in the eyes of the guests. Some nodded subtly, appreciating the skill and dedication behind each note. Others whispered quietly, acknowledging the boy's undeniable talent. Even the servants, who were accustomed to the lady's sharp tongue and her mockery of those beneath her, stopped in their tracks to witness the performance. The boy's mother stood nearby, tears welling in her eyes, proud of the courage and talent her son had displayed. The boy reached the final notes of his piece, playing with a precision and emotion that brought the music to a gentle, moving close. The room remained silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone was catching their breath, processing the unexpected beauty they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began to rise, hesitant at first, then growing stronger as the guests acknowledged the performance. The sound was warm and genuine, filled with admiration for the young boy who had transformed a moment meant for ridicule into a display of extraordinary talent. The lady's face flushed with a mixture of surprise, embarrassment, and begrudging admiration. Her plan to humiliate the boy had completely failed. Instead, he had captured the hearts and attention of everyone present. The boy stepped back from the piano, his chest rising and falling with relief and pride. He had faced his fear, confronted the expectations of the lady, and shown the world the depth of his ability. In doing so, he had begun to change not only how others saw him, but also how he saw himself. The evening continued, but the impact of the boy's performance lingered. Guests spoke quietly about the music, praising his skill and emotional expression. The lady of the house, though still composed on the outside, could not hide the shift in her perception. She had underestimated the boy and learned that talent, dedication, and inner strength could surpass her attempts to belittle someone. The boy, once timid and overshadowed, had stepped into a new light, and the mansion, once filled with whispers of mockery, now resonated with the undeniable beauty of his music. The music from the piano continued to fill the grand mansion, carrying with it a sense of magic that seemed to stop time for everyone present. The boy's fingers moved across the keys with a rhythm that was both deliberate and instinctive, as if his hands knew exactly where to go and how to express each note. Every chord told a story, every pause carried emotion, and the sound touched each listener in a unique way. The lady of the house, who had hoped for a scene of embarrassment, felt a strange sense of helplessness. She could no longer control the moment. The boy's music had taken over. Guests watched, captivated by the boy's talent. Some had initially expected to see awkwardness or nervousness, but what they experienced instead was something extraordinary. The music had depth, emotion, and precision that no one could ignore. Their polite curiosity had turned into genuine admiration. They leaned forward in their seats, listening to every note, their faces reflecting surprise and wonder. Even the servants, who were usually invisible in the background, stopped their work to witness the boy's remarkable performance. The boy played with growing confidence, each movement of his fingers telling a story that words could never fully capture. He could feel the room responding to him, the energy shifting from anticipation to awe. The music created a connection between him and the audience, a silent understanding that transcended status, wealth, and expectation. For the first time, he felt that he truly belonged in the room, not as a timid child or the son of a maid, but as an artist commanding attention with his skill. The lady of the house could no longer hide her astonishment. She had expected laughter and ridicule, but instead, the entire mansion seemed to hold its breath, hanging on every note. Her mind raced as she tried to understand how this small, quiet boy could produce such music. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that talent and dedication could not be dismissed, no matter how humble the source. She felt a pang of something unfamiliar, a mix of admiration and the discomfort of being proven wrong. The boy's confidence continued to grow with each passing moment. He could sense the attention and admiration from the guests, but he did not let it distract him. Instead, it fueled his performance, encouraging him to pour more of himself into the music. His fingers danced across the keys, creating melodies that were intricate yet flowing, precise yet emotional. Each note seemed to resonate with the heart of everyone in the room, leaving an impression that went beyond the surface. As the music swelled, the boy allowed himself to express feelings he had long kept hidden. The joy, the frustration, the hope, and the longing all found their voice in the melody. The room, once filled with chatter and anticipation, had become a space where only the music mattered. The guests were silent, listening intently, feeling the depth of emotion that the boy's performance carried. The sound was powerful, yet gentle, capable of touching even the most guarded hearts. The boy glanced briefly at his mother, who was watching from a distance, her eyes filled with pride and love. She had always known that he possessed this talent, that his music had the power to move people. Seeing him perform with such poise and confidence brought tears to her eyes. She felt a mixture of relief and pride, knowing that her son had faced a moment that could have been humiliating and transformed it into a triumph. The boy's dedication, practice, and love for music had turned the tables completely. The lady of the house shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She had been confident that she could embarrass the boy, showing everyone that he was just an awkward, timid child. Now, however, she was confronted with undeniable proof that she had been wrong. The boy's skill was extraordinary, and there was no place for mockery. Her carefully crafted image of control and superiority felt threatened, and for the first time she had no words to assert her authority. She watched as her plan completely backfired, leaving the boy as the center of admiration and respect. The guests began to whisper softly among themselves, acknowledging the boy's talent. They commented on the emotion in his playing, the precision of his fingers, and the depth of his understanding of the music. Some guests who had expected a light performance were now captivated, realizing that they were witnessing something exceptional. The boy had transformed the evening, creating a moment that would be remembered long after the gathering had ended. The boy, unaware of the exact impact he was having on the guests, continued to focus on the music. He allowed himself to be fully present, feeling each note and each chord as if it were a conversation between him and the room. His hands moved effortlessly across the keys, and the melody flowed naturally, guided by his passion and understanding of music. Every note, every pause, every gentle flourish was deliberate, and it carried meaning beyond what anyone could see. Time seemed to stretch as the performance continued. The boy was completely immersed, and the room responded in kind. The mansion, usually filled with the chatter of servants and guests, was now silent, listening to the story unfolding through the piano. Even the lady's friends, who had expected amusement at the boy's expense, were captivated, their faces reflecting awe and surprise. They whispered to each other, sharing in the wonder of the unexpected performance as the final notes approached. The boy played with a mix of strength and delicacy, bringing the music to a gentle, emotional close. The room held its breath for a moment, as if reluctant to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first and then growing stronger as everyone acknowledged the talent before them. The boy stepped back from the piano, his chest rising and falling with relief and pride. He had faced the challenge, overcome his fear, and shown everyone that his music was powerful and undeniable. The lady of the house felt a mixture of emotions as the applause filled the room. She could no longer dismiss the boy, could no longer treat him as someone to be humiliated. The performance had changed everything, not just in the eyes of the guests, but in her own perception as well. She realized that talent, dedication, and inner strength could not be ignored, no matter how she tried to control the situation. The boy had proven himself in the most remarkable way, and there was no denying the truth of his skill. The guests continued to discuss the performance quietly, praising the boy and expressing their admiration. The servants, too, looked on with newfound respect, realizing that the young boy they had often overlooked possessed a rare and extraordinary gift. The boy's mother approached him quietly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder and smiling with pride. She knew that this moment would stay with him forever, a turning point in his life where his courage and talent had been recognized and celebrated. The boy had not only performed beautifully, but he had also transformed the atmosphere of the mansion. What had begun as an attempt to humiliate him had become a triumph that no one could deny. The music had silenced the ridicule, replaced fear with confidence, and turned doubt into admiration. In that moment, the boy realized that he had the power to change how others saw him, but more importantly, he had the power to see himself in a new light, as someone capable of greatness and respect. The mansion, once a place of strict rules and criticism, was now a place where his music reigned, and his presence could not be ignored. The applause slowly faded, leaving a calm that was filled with awe and admiration. The boy stepped back from the piano, his small hands trembling slightly, not from fear anymore, but from the release of tension that had built up over days of anxiety and anticipation. The room remained silent for a moment longer, as if no one wanted to break the spell the music had created. The guests exchanged glances, their expressions filled with surprise and newfound respect. They had come expecting light entertainment, perhaps even a moment of ridicule, but instead they had witnessed something extraordinary. The lady of the house remained seated, her carefully poised composure shaken. She had imagined this moment differently, seeing herself in control, ready to amuse her guests at the expense of a timid child. Now, however, she faced a reality she could not ignore. The boy's music had silenced her plan entirely, and in its place, admiration for his talent spread throughout the room. Her pride, which had always been tied to her control over the household and its members, felt challenged. She had underestimated him, and that realization was unsettling. As the guests continued to whisper in admiration, the boy's mother approached him, her eyes shining with pride. She could see the relief in his posture and the quiet confidence he had gained from the performance. She offered a gentle smile, a wordless acknowledgement that he had faced a difficult moment and emerged victorious. Her heart swelled with pride not only for his skill but for his courage in standing before the lady and the guests, performing with such authenticity and strength. The lady cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure. She spoke, her voice steady but carrying a hint of hesitation. "Well, that was unexpected," she said, carefully choosing her words. She realized that any attempt to diminish the boy's performance would only draw attention to her misjudgment. The guests nodded and murmured in agreement, subtly reinforcing the boy's triumph without her needing to acknowledge it openly. The lady's usual authority felt diminished, not because she lacked power, but because she could not challenge what had been proven before everyone. The boy's confidence grew as he noticed the change in the room. The guests' polite admiration became more evident, and even the servants looked at him with renewed respect. His music had created a bridge between himself and the audience, one that was built on talent and sincerity rather than social status or expectations. He had transformed the space, turning a room filled with judgment and mockery into a place where his skill and heart were recognized and celebrated. As he looked around, the boy realized that the lady's friends were whispering among themselves, discussing the performance with genuine awe. Their surprise was evident, and some even leaned closer to each other, sharing their amazement quietly. The boy had always practiced in private, never imagining that one day he would be recognized in such a manner. The realization that his music had the power to influence the perceptions of others filled him with a sense of accomplishment he had never felt before. The lady of the house, still trying to regain control, attempted to maintain her air of authority. She smiled politely at the guests, but it was a fragile mask over the discomfort she felt. She had planned to embarrass the boy, yet here he was, commanding attention and respect with nothing but his talent and dedication. Her plan had not only failed but had also highlighted her own misjudgment. She felt a mix of emotions: surprise, frustration, and a reluctant admiration for the boy's abilities. The boy's mother stood close by, her heart full of pride and relief. She had watched her son grow up quietly, witnessing his love for music and his dedication to practice. She knew that moments like this were rare, and seeing him shine in the presence of the lady and her friends was a validation of his hard work and perseverance. She felt grateful that he had found the courage to perform, and proud that his talent could not be hidden any longer. As the evening continued, the atmosphere in the mansion had shifted. The guests spoke quietly about the boy's performance, praising his skill and the emotional depth of his music. Even the servants, who had often been invisible in the grand household, found themselves looking at the boy with admiration and respect. The performance had changed the dynamics within the mansion, proving that talent and courage could command attention and recognition, even in the face of prejudice and expectation. The lady of the house remained seated, watching the boy and the reactions of the guests. She realized that her attempts to assert superiority through mockery had been completely undermined by his talent. For the first time, she faced a situation where control could not be imposed, where admiration and respect were earned through skill and authenticity rather than social hierarchy. The boy had demonstrated something she could not take away: the power of dedication, talent, and heart. The boy's hands rested gently on his lap as he absorbed the reaction from the room. He felt a mix of relief, pride, and quiet joy. He had faced a situation designed to humiliate him and had turned it into a triumph. The music had not only silenced ridicule, but had also revealed his inner strength to everyone present. He understood that this moment would remain significant in his life, marking a turning point where his courage and talent had been recognized and celebrated. The guests, still murmuring among themselves, continued to offer words of praise and encouragement. Some complimented the boy on the precision of his playing, others on the emotion conveyed through the music. Each comment reinforced the impact of his performance, strengthening his sense of confidence and accomplishment. The boy had not only proven his skill but had also demonstrated the power of perseverance and self-belief. The lady of the house, though still maintaining her composure, could not hide her awareness of the boy's triumph. She realized that her plan had failed and that her influence over the household could not diminish the respect he had earned. The boy had turned the situation around, using his talent to challenge expectations and change perceptions. Her authority, though still present in other aspects of the mansion, was momentarily overshadowed by the undeniable impact of his music. The boy's mother approached him once more, offering a quiet word of encouragement and a proud smile. She knew that this moment would stay with him forever, a memory of courage, talent, and the transformative power of music. The boy had faced a challenge that could have been humiliating and had instead created a moment of triumph and admiration. The experience had strengthened his confidence and solidified his belief in the value of dedication and perseverance. As the evening progressed, the boy remained aware of the shift in the mansion's atmosphere. Guests continued to discuss his performance, praising the skill, emotion, and dedication evident in every note. The lady of the house, while maintaining outward composure, understood that her plan to humiliate him had been completely unsuccessful. The boy had transformed the intended moment of shame into a celebration of talent and courage, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The boy's journey in the mansion had reached a turning point. He had faced fear, pressure, and the expectations of those who sought to diminish him, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and more self-assured. The performance had not only demonstrated his skill, but had also shown the transformative power of perseverance, courage, and the pursuit of one's passions. In the eyes of the guests, the servants, and even the lady of the house, the boy had earned a place of respect, recognition, and admiration, changing the dynamics of the mansion and his own sense of self forever. The evening gradually moved on, but the impact of the boy's performance lingered in every corner of the mansion. The guests were still speaking softly among themselves, sharing their admiration for the young musician whose talent had completely surprised them. Some of them openly complimented the boy, asking him about his practice, his inspirations, and the emotions behind the music. The boy, though still a little shy, responded with quiet confidence, feeling a sense of pride he had never experienced before. This was a moment where he was seen for who he truly was, and not just as the son of a maid. The lady of the house, though maintaining her composed exterior, could no longer deny the change in perception that had taken place. She had come expecting amusement and had instead witnessed something remarkable. The boy had not only performed flawlessly but had also captured the hearts of everyone present. She realized that her power, based on authority and control, could not diminish the natural talent and dedication that the boy possessed. For the first time, she saw him not as someone to be humiliated, but as a person worthy of respect. The boy's mother quietly approached, her eyes filled with pride and relief. She had known her son's abilities, had witnessed the countless hours of practice, and understood the depth of his dedication. Seeing him recognized and appreciated in such a grand setting was a validation not only of his talent but of all the encouragement she had given him throughout the years. She whispered words of love and encouragement, letting him know that he had done something extraordinary. The boy felt a warmth and reassurance that helped calm the lingering nerves from the evening. Guests continued to mingle, but their conversations frequently returned to the boy's music. Many expressed surprise that someone so young and from humble beginnings could create something so moving. They praised his precision, his emotion, and his ability to tell a story without words. The boy, listening to their admiration, began to understand the power his music held. It was more than just notes on a page. It was a bridge between himself and others, a way to communicate feelings and stories that could touch hearts, regardless of social standing or circumstance. The lady of the house, meanwhile, reflected quietly on her actions. She had underestimated the boy, believing him to be timid and lacking talent. Her plan to humiliate him had completely failed, and in its place, the boy had earned genuine admiration. She could feel a subtle shift within herself, a recognition that talent, dedication, and courage could not be dismissed or belittled. Though she still carried her usual pride, it was tempered by the undeniable truth of the boy's accomplishment. The boy, sensing the shift in the room and the change in the lady's demeanor, felt a quiet sense of empowerment. He had faced a situation designed to belittle him, yet he had emerged stronger, respected, and admired. The music had been his ally, allowing him to express his true self and gain recognition on his own terms. For the first time, he felt that his voice mattered, that his efforts had not gone unnoticed, and that he had the power to influence how others perceived him. As the evening drew to a close, the guests began to leave, each offering words of praise and encouragement to the boy. They spoke of his dedication, the beauty of his music, and the emotion he conveyed through every note. The boy, modest and humble, thanked them quietly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He had not only proven his talent but had also demonstrated the courage to stand tall in the face of adversity. The mansion, once filled with tension and anticipation of embarrassment, now radiated a sense of respect and admiration. The boy's music had transformed the atmosphere, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Even the servants, who had often been overlooked, felt inspired by the boy's courage and skill. They saw that dedication and talent could command recognition, regardless of one's place in the household hierarchy. The lady of the house approached the boy, her expression a mix of surprise and reluctant admiration. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with more thought than usual. "Your music is remarkable," she said quietly. "I did not expect such talent." The boy nodded politely, not seeking praise, but feeling a sense of validation from her acknowledgement. The lady, for the first time, had no words of mockery or criticism. Her authority had been challenged, and she was forced to recognize the boy's skill honestly. The boy's mother embraced him gently, her heart full of pride. She had always known that her son possessed a rare talent and the dedication to nurture it. Seeing him recognized by others, even by those who had doubted him, filled her with a sense of joy and relief. She knew that this moment would be remembered forever, not just for the applause and admiration, but for the courage and perseverance that had made it possible. As the night settled, the mansion returned to its usual rhythm, but the energy had shifted. The boy had gained respect, not through words or status, but through his talent and determination. He had shown that humility, practice, and courage could command attention and admiration, even in the face of skepticism and ridicule. The experience had strengthened his confidence, teaching him that talent combined with dedication could overcome obstacles and change perceptions. In the days that followed, the boy continued to practice, inspired by the recognition he had received. The lady of the house, while still maintaining her social authority, treated him with a new level of respect. The guests who had attended the gathering spoke of his performance long after the evening had ended, and the story of his talent began to spread beyond the mansion. The boy, once shy and overlooked, had become a symbol of dedication, courage, and the transformative power of music. The boy's journey had reached a significant milestone. He had faced a challenge intended to belittle him, and instead, he had turned it into an opportunity to demonstrate his abilities. The experience had not only shown his skill but had also reinforced the value of perseverance, courage, and self-belief. The mansion, once a place where he had been invisible, had become a space where his music was celebrated, and his presence was acknowledged and respected. The boy, reflecting on the evening, understood that his talent was a gift that could create change, both for himself and for those who witnessed it. He had learned that courage and dedication could overcome fear and doubt, and that recognition was earned through effort and authenticity rather than social standing. The mansion, once a place of strict rules and hierarchy, had become a place where his music could thrive and inspire others. The boy's mother watched him with pride, knowing that the experience had strengthened his confidence and sense of self. She understood that this was only the beginning of his journey, and that his music would continue to open doors and create opportunities. The boy had faced adversity and emerged stronger, proving that talent, courage, and dedication could triumph over expectation and judgment. The boy's life in the mansion had been forever changed. He had faced a situation designed to humiliate him, and he had turned it into a moment of triumph and recognition. His music had silenced criticism, earned admiration, and transformed the atmosphere of the mansion. The experience had reinforced his belief in his own abilities, and had shown him that courage, practice, and perseverance could overcome even the harshest expectations. In the quiet of the night, as the mansion settled and the guests departed, the boy sat at the piano once more. He played softly, reflecting on the events of the evening and the journey that had brought him to this point. The notes flowed easily, carrying with them a sense of joy, pride, and accomplishment. He understood that his music had the power to change hearts and minds, and he felt grateful for the opportunity to share it. The mansion, once a place of intimidation and hierarchy, had become a stage for his talent, and he had proven to himself and everyone else that his music could speak louder than fear, doubt, or ridicule.